All right, everybody, welcome back to another episode of Around the Draft. It's one of the positions that might actually be, we've said this with a couple of positions so far, but might be the deepest group and one of the more fun watches of the 2025 NFL Draft. It's interior defensive line week. What's more fun than watching big uglies run into big uglies for 35 games or whatever many games we all watch for these guys? So, no, but this is definitely one of the groups that people are talking a lot about for this class, and for good reason, I think. I think the top of the class is a little surprising, at least for me. We'll kind of get into that, see if you guys agree in terms of how we rank some of those guys. But for the most part, I think it mostly lived up to the hype that it's been getting throughout the process. But joining me as always is Dalton and Jake here, and a little friend behind Jake is I tend to see him sometimes or see her. I don't know if it's him or her behind you there, but we have we have guests on the show every so often. My cat will probably.
She might give her thoughts. On
Hey, if she can, we'll take any other thoughts we can get. But no, this should be a fun episode. Before we jump into, we're doing our top 10 specifically, but we'll as always we'll talk about some of our honorable mentions. Before we jump into that, though, Dalton, I'll start with you. Overall, kind of thoughts on the watch for these guys. Any major takeaways before we jump into our rankings here?
Deep class. Maybe not. I don't know if there's any elite talent really in this class, but I ended up with 5 first-round grades on this. Or no, I'm sorry, 4 first-round grades on this class, and everybody in my top 10 is a day 2 or better grade. So
yeah, I'm there too. So.
This is a very deep class in terms of talent. We're going to see some good players still go even on day 3 of the draft, I think. There's just so much talent here.
Yeah, I tend to agree with that. I think you could get into the 20s before you start seeing guys that shouldn't be selected until like 6th, 7th round. I think it's pretty easy you could do that. And I watched, admittedly, 22 players total. I have 15 full evals. I want to watch at least 3 games of all the guys that I have full evals on. So I only got to that with 15 guys. But all 15 of them, guys that for different reasons, but I would not hesitate to draft them somewhere in the first, I'd say 4 rounds, getting past the top 10, start getting into day 3 a little bit, but a lot of guys that will be contributors pretty early on in the NFL. So, Jake, how do you feel? Same way, kind of different feelings there? Or?
Yeah, pretty much the same way. I didn't get 20 full evaluations, but I watched at least a little bit of close to 20 guys, and pretty much all of them I felt confident could at least, not a starter necessarily, but it could at least hold down like a rotational role. I'm in the NFL, so yeah, very deep. I'm going to sound very positive about probably everyone that I talk about today.
Yeah, it's fine.
One thing I did notice in terms of negatives was there's a lot of players in this class that I had notes on for them leaving their pad level.
Yeah, there's a lot of high pad level guys, and ironically, one of the guys that I didn't have that note on is my 14th player. So it's not a very common thing among the top guys that it's like not at least a consideration with some of these guys. So.
Yeah, I was looking over my notes before the episode, and I was like, I wrote that down a lot. Maybe I was just overanalyzing.
No, I tend to agree.
What I think it is a lot of the top prospects, and it makes sense because that's what pays, is that a lot of the top prospects are probably more pass rushers than they are run defenders. And I think that's when you tend to see that. Guys, like, there's a lot of you can tell there's a lot of guys that are converted DNs that are kind of playing inside. I think that's kind of a big part of it.
I think that certainly contributes because especially I'd say like probably half of my top 10, I would say that's at least something I'm like considering as an issue with them, or at least I saw enough where I'm like, could probably bring that down a little bit. Some of them are a little bit on the shorter side, which helps them because they can only get so high pad level wise. But especially the taller guys, it's like you're going to need to bring that down a little bit if you want to be stout against the run, especially.
Yeah.
So.
Being 6'6" is great, but, it makes it kind of difficult to defend the run. Like, you're not stopping the tush push at 6'6".
No, probably not. Like, not everybody can be like, the Eric Armsteads of the world, the Calais Campbells, the can't think of his name with the Colts right now. Played with Armstead in a
DeForest Buckner.
Yeah, Buckner. Yeah, like you can't. Not everybody can be like 6'6" and like 310 pounds and just be able to get low or just still be effective against the run like some of those guys are. So it's tough, but some of these guys have to figure it out. Before we get into our top 10s, like we always do, I want to just shout out some guys outside of your top 10 that, hey, some of them might end up being in our top 10s. Like, especially, we tend to have at least one guy that's like, all right, let's go 14. And then either me or like Dalton, or usually not. I don't feel like with Jake outside of Scatterboo the one time. Outside of that, it's no, I don't think it's normally Jake. But like, one was like, he's my fourth guy. And I'm like, shit. No. No,
it's you and me, Shayne, that we'll just have polar opposites.
It tends to be at least one dude where you're like, I really like Isaiah Bond. Yeah, exactly. I really like Isaiah Bond. I'm like, man, I wish he was in college next year. Yeah, it's very funny, but it happens when you're watching so many guys. But I can kick us off because there's one player that I need to just knock out right away, and I don't know where you guys are gonna land on because I could see an argument for him being in the top 10 just off potential. But for 15, I have Deion Walker.
Oh, wow.
I think there's a little bit of my bias going on here in the sense that I really hate when dudes who are this big don't play like it. I really just don't like guys who play like they're 300 pounds when they're 350. Who play like it's something about the way he plays the game. Like there's a lot of athletic potential in this guy. You know, I think he over 6'7", over about 350.
6'6", 345.
Okay, yeah, but I think at the senior, did he measure in over 6 or almost 6'7" at the Senior Bowl? I think he did. But point is he's about that tall. He's 350, close to it at least. He's a massive human being that moves better than he should for his size. Like that's the thing. But again, I think he moves like he's smaller, but he also plays like he's smaller because of that. I think a little bit, where he wants to be like more of like almost like a 3-4 end style player in terms of like movement skills and what he's trying to do. But if you're going to be this big, you have to impact the run game more than he does. You just have to. And his season in 2023, I think, was better than 2024. So maybe get him to the NFL, get him in the room with guys that can coach him up a little bit on how to use his size better. This is a huge boom potential pick. Like if you can get this guy, he's going to go higher than I would take him. But if you can get him in the third round and hope that he can develop into what he has physically, like what he's physically capable of, he's going to be one of the 10 best guys in the class, right? Like that's just what it is. But for me, I wouldn't want to take that chance with him when there's so many other guys that I'm more confident are going to fill the role I want them to fill at their size. So that's kind of my spiel with them. Yeah. If you guys have him in your top 10, I won't blame you.
Yeah, I have him at 7.
Okay, you have him at 7. Good to know. Okay.
Yeah.
There it is. There's already one. Again, I don't really blame you for that. I don't. I really don't. So it's, go ahead.
I had a second round grade on him because he's huge and he pairs that size with a very explosive first step. And he's very quick off the ball. And so also really deep pass rush toolbox. Like,
for a guy, especially for his size. Yeah.
Like, and I just think the ceiling is really high with that.
Yeah.
And also, like, the way I look at it is even if he never becomes a true 3-down defensive lineman, at worst, you have a guy that's going to get you a handful of sacks a year as a pass rusher, as just as just a third down D tackle. And he's going to bat a few balls, and he's going to probably block a couple kicks a year.
We talked about that before.
Legitimately.
Yeah.
And
good.
A guy like that is going to have a 10-year career in the league just because he can do those things. And that being the floor with how high his ceiling is, for me, there's just so much to like where a lot of other guys around that range, I just don't know. Their flaws seem more fatal. Whereas with him, I don't really see anything that's going to keep him from not being at least a productive player in the league.
Yeah. And again, I get that part of it because I do think that because of his size and the ability to rush the passer, that combination is going to give certain, especially teams and just guys, trouble. I admittedly was just kind of disappointed by the pass rush, like watching him this year, especially. If I watched more 2023, I might have seen a little bit more from him. But I think he just doesn't use his tools as well as I'd like him to at this point. And he's a young player. Like, again, this is an upside play if you're taking him early, right? 100% an upside play. He might not be a very good player for the first year or two of his career, at least in terms of, like, being a full-time contributor on the defensive line. But like you said, he's going to have a role because of his just uniqueness as a player, probably regardless. So, yeah, that element of it's kind of hard to ignore for sure. But where'd you have him, Jake?
He was at 11.
So just outside your top 10. Okay.
Yeah. Yeah, speaking to the pass rush, one of the main things I noted down for him was that I think he really just needs to develop a better bag of moves, pretty much. I mean, he's just not that great with his
I think he
hands,
tries a
from
lot
what I
of
noticed.
things. Like he shows a lot of stuff,
Yeah.
but I don't know if any of it is refined enough yet.
Yeah.
Which again, he's 20. You're going to be 21 in his rookie season, so there's an element of that you have to consider.
Yeah. Other than that, I feel pretty similar about him to kind of what Dalton said. He almost to me feels like I don't think he's necessarily in bad shape, but the way he doesn't play as strong.
Yeah.
You kind of touched on it. He doesn't play as strong as you would think he would, but he's very agile. So it almost makes me feel like if he could just put on
his
more
build
muscle.
is also not like he's really big, but I don't think he's well proportioned at this point. I think he does need a year or two to develop an NFL body. I don't think he really has the build he's going to probably have to be with at the NFL to be successful long term. But again, he's 21 years old. He's going to be 21 at least. Like, there's room for that to change. He's not a 24-year-old 6-year senior. Like, this is a guy that could look a lot different in 3 years. So it's just how much are you willing to bet on that upside, basically. So
yeah, and that's kind of why I don't really have any main worries with him. We were kind of talking about it before the episode, but he's one of the guys where pad level was
which is going to be with someone that big. He
does have he does have a very quick first step off the ball,
but sure.
Yeah, but too often I kind of saw that, and then he would just go straight into standing up, and it kind of negates it a little bit. But all of these things are things that as you said, he's young.
They can get better. These are not limitations on him that are foregone conclusion.
Yeah,
right.
It's so quick, but then immediately the move is just upright, and I'm just gonna put my arms straight out.
When you have 35-inch arms or whatever, again, he's getting by in a lot of athleticism and size, and that works for him at Kentucky for the most part. But that's the thing, though, is it did, but it also didn't a lot of the time. Yeah. And I just wonder, is he going to be one of those guys? Because we see it all the time. These big athletic linemen who just don't have any polish, and sometimes they just don't get polished at the NFL level. I like to think that he's going to be a contributor either way, like you said, Dalton. But that type of guy does concern me a little bit, because if he played like a nose tackle with his size, and also just had some unrealized pass rush ability, he would be probably in my top 10, because there's a couple guys that I think fit that mold that are closer to my top 10. But it's really the opposite. And I don't know if you can really you can instill that type of attitude as a run defender into guys, especially if you go to the right team. If this guy gets drafted by the Lions, he's probably gonna be an all-pro in 3 years, because the Lions just do that to guys. They make guys just play like animals. But if he goes to a team that doesn't really have somebody who can instill that in him, is he just going to be a guy that is only out there on third downs? When do you see 350-pound guys only on the field on third downs in the NFL? It just doesn't really happen. It could happen for him, but it's just he's a weird player ultimately.
Yeah.
I think.
There's a few guys like that are just weird.
There's a few weirdos, and for sure, in terms of that. No offense, but I think it's funny that 15, 11, 7. It's literally Jake's the middle ground between us, but you could go anywhere. I wouldn't be surprised if he's ranked anywhere inside of that range for a lot of people, even higher maybe a little bit. But spent a lot of time on him, but I think it was worth it, because he's one of the weirder guys to kind of evaluate in this class.
Yeah.
Dalton, you go next here. Who's someone outside your top 10 that you'd want to definitely?
So I sadly had to put this guy at 11, and I was really bummed out that he didn't crack my top 10. So I'm going to shout him out in case he's not on anybody else's. Aeneas Peebles, Virginia Tech.
Ooh, I didn't get a full eval on him, so I don't have him ranked, but he'd probably be closer to 10 than 15.
Yeah,
but I didn't finish it. So
his tape's fun, powerful, explosive. One thing that I didn't check for a lot of guys, high motor. Really high motor.
There's a couple guys, but not a lot. Yeah, I would say not a lot of guys.
And and he pass rushes well, despite not having a ton of physical tools, which I'll mention.
He was really sawed off build wise.
Yeah. But he also, and despite those physical limitations, he still fights really hard to maintain the point of attack
Mhm.
against the run. But the number one issue for him, he's 6'1", 290. And
Yeah,
that's just
he's
not an NFL defensive tackle.
not if you're not an elite athlete typically, but he's a
Yeah.
fun player. You're right.
Yeah.
Like, and that sucks when you get those guys who are like, if you were like 20 pounds heavier or 3 inches taller and had like 33-inch arms, you didn't have to be a great athlete. You could still do something.
Yeah.
It's just tough when you're,
because he works his ass off.
Yeah, he does.
And the other thing is that also because the other thing that's an issue is he is who he is because he's going to be 24 during his rookie season.
Yeah.
So those kind of things kind of make him a pure day 3 guy. But I mean, someone like that, like with that attitude, you can't coach attitude. And he's a guy that's found a way to be successful in college. And, I wouldn't bet against him to find a way to have success in the NFL. Those guys tend to do. But it's just hard to invest a lot of capital in a guy like that.
Yeah, it's an uphill battle for sure. So,
Yeah.
where did you have him anywhere in your top 15, Jake? 14.
I had him
Okay, so-
14.
and I don't have him ranked, but he'd probably be somewhere in that 11 to 15 range. So
He's so
Yes.
disruptive. If I thought he would be a better pass rusher in the NFL, I'd have him higher on my list. But he gets off the ball so fast and he's so violent, and you just can't move him when running the ball. Like he's not movable. Shayne, he's a guy that I want the Steelers.
as a late round pick, I could see him
Like,
being someone they would add. I do want to get just again someone with more size, ideally, but he plays like he's 310.
Yeah.
Doesn't look like he's 310, but he plays like he's 310. I think again the problem ultimately with guys like him is like in a weak interior class, you could probably talk yourself into him as like a late day 2, early day 3 flyer, just because of just how much effort he plays with, and a lot of run defense in the NFL for people who like. There's a lot of run defense is honestly effort and coaching. Like that's just what a lot of it is. Like you have to have the traits to be a great run defender, but as a team, if you play with really sound like just discipline and you're able to play hard consistently, you're probably going to play the run pretty well. But you still have to have some physical traits to do it, right? And he just doesn't really, at least on paper, doesn't really have them.
Yeah, one of the best interior defensive linemen ever. John Randall, not a very big guy.
No, but
he was crazy.
He was insane. He was athletic. He played hard as shit every snap. Like again, you have to have like if you're not going to be a freak, you have to be a freak in other ways, and that's what's him, right? Like, hey, pause real quick. Just say, hey, pause. No, but
Pause.
I don't know what John Randall was getting up to, but point is like realistically,
like a dog on the field.
Making NFL players freak out is what he was good at, which is not easy to do typically. No, but yeah, Peoples is definitely a fun player for sure. Anyone you want to shout out, Jake, specifically outside your top 10 here?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with someone a little
Okay.
further down the list, just because I don't think we'll talk about him, but I think he's kind of a testament to how deep this class is. Tim Smith.
Okay.
He's number 18.
Gotcha. Alabama defensive tackle. Yeah.
Yes. But I just think even though he is my inside D line 18, I still think he's going to be like a rotation guy in the NFL. Did you guys?
I don't have a full eval of him. No.
Much of
No,
him?
he's not one of my full eval guys. So
Okay, gotcha. Yeah. I think he's just a little bit limited athletically.
that's what I
and that's
generally
gonna put him
kind of
at the
saw
next
in one
level.
game I saw of him. Yeah.
Yeah. He's so good against the run, and he plays so smart. I don't know. I think, he's probably going to be like a 6th, 7th round guy, but he's someone that I still think can legitimately come into the league and be a rotational player. And that's pretty much most of the guys at the bottom.
Yeah, it's a
of
lot of
this.
guys who are like in a weaker class, they probably get drafted a little bit higher, but because there's a lot of guys who have just either really good athletic traits or just have more size to them, it's hard to kind of crack inside that top 15 or so guys. So.
Yeah. Can we just? There's one other guy I want to shout out because we're not
Oh
going to
yeah,
get. So
absolutely. Yeah.
Got to talk about JJ Perjouet. I think that's how you pronounce it.
I'm not sure, but I'll go with that. That sounds cool to me. So.
Just because I don't know if I've ever seen a 6'2", 325-pound edge.
It's pretty incredible, right?
It's the
Like,
weirdest.
the fact that they even
game I
do it at
watched.
all. Like the fact that they even do it. I have another Ole Miss player that isn't Walter Nolan on my list though.
Interesting.
So we'll talk about him later. But not on my top 10, but actually I'll throw his name out here in a minute. But yeah, I didn't finish my evaluation on him because I was like, what am I supposed to do with this, honestly?
Yeah.
Like it's more so just like it's weird. I don't really know what to do with it.
Yeah.
Like it, good for him.
Yeah. He has a 5th-round grade for me. He's like 16, but it was interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun group at Ole Miss.
There's so much potential with him.
Theoretical potential, absolutely.
Theoretical, but like,
But how do you know?
See where he's going to play in the NFL is the issue.
Because he could be anything from like a 5 tech to a nose tackle for all we know.
But he might not be any of those.
That's the point. Like, how are you supposed to exactly know for sure? Because you never see him do defensive tackle stuff really. So like, you don't, like, so how do you know how he is at the point of attack or double teams? Like, how do you know that for sure? Like, at least with any like actual accuracy, it beats me. You know what I mean? What'd you say, Jay? Yeah, exactly. It's like, hey, if you want to trust him, by all means. I did want to throw out Jared Ivey. Out of him. He is an edge rusher for them, but he's over 280 pounds, 6'5". I feel like his best role is going to be as like a base 3-4 end, like that type of fit, where he's a little bit bigger than a 4-3 end you'd like him to be. So I'd rather him be in like a 3-4 style system. But I just don't think as an edge he has the fluidness and just the ability to turn the corner that you'd want if he's going to stay out at edge. But I think his game plays better in interior defensive lineman, basically. Whether it's a 5 tech, whether you have him as like kind of a smaller 3 tech type of mold, however you want to use him. I do think his most effective position is going to be there. I had him at 13. It wasn't anything crazy, but shout out Trevor Sickman from PFF and Stock Exchange podcast that he threw that out there, and I decided to watch him as an interior guy. And didn't like him quite as much as he did in his rankings I saw, but I do think that's his home in the NFL. I think that's where he'd fit best because as a 4-3 base end, I think he could survive. But again, I just don't think he has the chops as a pass rusher in terms of getting around corners and stuff like that. He's a good power rusher, but that just plays better inside for me. So yeah, I figured you guys probably didn't get to him.
He popped up though on.
Yeah, he's noticeable. He had a good year
for sure.
Yeah, definitely had a good season as a passer. Yeah. I just don't think it translates as well.
No, I think he'll play he'll do something in the NFL. He's like there's a few guys in this class that I think because they were edge rushers in college, they're gonna have to transition to D tackle. But in this class, especially
it's hard.
And also I just don't. They're not. It's gonna be such a transition for them. I just don't really see why you would spend a high pick on them.
Right. Yeah. Well, he ended up at 13 for me just because I'm interested.
Yeah.
In what that would look like because he could definitely rush the passer. I just think the ways he wins will win more often in the NFL at whether it's a 5 tech or a 3 tech spot. So even as like a 4-eye a lot of the time probably too, like that type of alignment just makes more sense for his build too. Like he has good length but not like crazy length too for an edge rusher. He plays better inside. I know he would have longer arms than usual on the inside. So this all kind of added up to him being more of an interior player for me. But let's jump into our top 10s. We definitely want to focus on those guys here. And I'm curious ultimately how different or how the same it is. We know one player is already different for you, Dalton, of course, with Walker in the top 10, which again, I'm not nearly the same thing for those who remember the Isaiah Bond discussion back when we did receivers. Not nearly the same discrepancy there. I get having Walker higher than I have him, so it's definitely different, but still fun to see that. But I'm actually going to start with you, Jake. Who's your number 10 player at this point? So, okay, so he was number 11 for me. I'll throw that right out there. So just missed the cut. Dalton, where did you have him?
Collins was 4 for me.
Woo!
Yeah.
Dalton loves his run defense, I bet. Which I don't blame you.
Yeah. And it might just be stood out more in this class.
Fair. Yeah, we'll talk about him. Yeah, go ahead.
That's true. Yeah. It is so fun to watch him shed blocks.
He'll
He
shed
just
some
throws
blocks.
people out of the way. He's violent about it. He's just a dog in the trenches. He wins his battles. Fights through double teams consistently. I struggle to see a situation where he would go to any team and their run defense wouldn't
Right.
instantly get better. He's a really good run defender. He just needs more of a plan rushing the passer. That's why he's a bit lower for me. I do think this is something that can be improved. I'm not really too worried about it. It's just kind of why I've got him a little lower. Might be the same for Shayne because I know we're in a similar spot.
Yeah.
But yeah, I know that any team that drafts him is instantly getting a very good run defender. So that alone will give him a pretty good role in the NFL.
Yeah, Dalton, since you have him higher, I'll let you go in a second here because I just want to throw because I'm pretty similar to Jake, but I agree with the run defense. He's one of the better just pure run defenders in the class, if not one of like the three best probably overall, honestly, just in terms of that. I think the problem ultimately for me is I don't think he's a good enough athlete to improve much as a pass rusher at the next level. I think he is limited in that aspect of the game. And he's played for a lot of time in college. Has a lot of experience, but didn't really play a full-time role until really this past year, which is not necessarily something I care as much about in the interior sometimes, but it still can be a bit of a red flag for me. Just kind of most important, there's just a lot of guys that I think are more athletic than him that have more potential as a pass rusher and also – bring enough run defense in whatever role they're playing in the interior that I kind of had to push him down a little bit. But he's a player that everyone needs on their team. Like this is one of those guys that no one wants to really draft sometimes in terms of the skill set, but every team needs it. Like especially now with the way the running back resurgence is kind of happening, everybody needs an Alfred Collins type on their roster. So, but Dalton, why don't you tell us why he's all the way up at 4 for you?
So yeah, I have a late first round grade on him, and I mean. So, like you said, he's going to be a stalwart against the run.
Yes, absolutely.
So, and I get the pass rush concerns, but one of the things I noticed is on a lot of his pass rush snaps, he's commanding the attention of two guys. Like, there was help a lot, and I think that's going to continue at the NFL because he's got three important traits. He's powerful, he's explosive, and he's violent. And those are really important. Those violent hands with his power profile and explosiveness, he's going to command a lot of attention. And I think that's something that is not ever going to show up on the stat sheet. But if he just holds up a guard and a center on pass rush snaps, as if your edge rushers are doing their job, you can't really ask for much more than that from a D tackle, I don't think. Just because it's not flashy, I think he's still going to be effective. And I mean, his gap integrity on run against the run is just so good. And I just think that's going to be a thing that really, I mean, the pass rushing upside is kind of what keeps him a tier below my top 3. But I think out of that next group, he stands out because he is going to be so good against the run.
Yeah, I respect it. I just again with him, like I just don't see the explosiveness aspect with him. I just truly don't. Like the power is certainly there. That's why he's so good against the run. Because guys just cannot keep him contained, especially when you just try to block him with one guy, which they rarely did with Texas because you can't really. But it's just again, I think there's enough guys above him for me that are not as good run defenders, especially like the non like nose tackle types, right? Just not as good against the run, but have a lot more just in the tank in terms of skill set as a pass rusher or athleticism as a pass rusher. And even with the resurgence of the run game, I do still prioritize a guy having upside there, especially like kind of parsing out tiers. Now, granted, number 11 for me still puts you pretty much at the end of day 2. So it's not like it's that much of a gap between him and like number 7 on this list even. Like, but it is still just kind of push some guys up because of that. I also just wonder, like, he didn't really play, and I expected him to be this, but he didn't really play nose at Texas really ever. He was a true like 3 tech a lot of the time, snap wise, which I wonder if he would be better in the NFL as a true nose, where his run defense will be a little bit easier to kind of give to like just a 2 gap more often. But either way, like that's still a really good player here for sure. Dalton, who's your number 10 guy?
So my number 10 is Darius Alexander from Toledo.
Okay, he's my number 5.
Oh, wow.
Okay, so
So
I'll throw that up here. Okay.
I like his quickness. He does hold the point of attack well, wins penetration. He does a lot of the good things good D tackles do. Great size. I think there's a lot of potential there. The thing that bothered me that really kept me from having him higher up is that the he didn't dominate, and he was clearly like the only NFL player on the field in a lot of games you're playing in the MAC, but it didn't always look like it. He didn't jump off the tape as much as I expected someone with his size and ability playing in the MAC, to be honest. That's just really what it came down to.
That's fair.
Yeah,
so where'd you
I could see that.
Okay.
Alexander's number 7 for me.
So I keep
Yeah, one of the things I had noticed about him was it almost looked like he kind of takes plays off.
Which that is
times.
something I noticed a little bit too. I will say, even as having it 5, I'll get into that, but yeah, go ahead, Jay.
And with that said, he does so many things for their defense. I mean, there's a play I remember watching where he got a pick 6 like 10 yards down the field, dropping into coverage, and then ran it 60 yards back to the house. I mean, he's very fun to watch when he's on. He's got a great bull rush. He's very strong. He sheds blocks well. Pretty solid in run defense, I thought. He's just a little bit older, and yeah, as Dalton said, he doesn't really dominate as much as you would expect with that skill set. And it almost looked like, I don't know if he might be tired or I really don't know, but it almost looked to me like he was just taking plays off at times. So that if he didn't have that, he probably would have been higher up because I really do like pretty much everything that he does. But yeah.
Yeah, for me, I think he is in terms of guys that I have like in tiers of type or the types of players, my number 1 player, which we'll talk about later, he is kind of the tier down from him in terms of style, where I think he's just a really well built all around interior defender, especially as like a 3-tech type. Like there's really nothing I saw where I'm like, he's not going to be able to be an effective whatever at the next level. The problem with him ultimately, like you said, is I think that he did play lower level competition. There wasn't always dominant plays as much as you maybe expect them to. But between what he did at Toledo and then also what he showed at Senior Bowl, I try not to overinflate the Senior Bowl, but it was his chance to play players that were more of his competition level, and he looked the part and then some for me. And I think he's going to test super well. I think he's a very explosive athlete. He is an older prospect, though, too, which is going to hurt him. I don't know what his age is, but he's played a lot of college football, so I'm assuming he's at least 23, if not 24. So we'll see what that comes in at once we learn that. But I think there's nothing he isn't going to be able to do well at the next level pretty early. And at best, you're getting a true like full-time starting interior player as a 3-tech or a 5-tech even a little bit. Worst case scenario, I think you get a hyper-athletic guy that can come in on pass downs and still be effective against the run when needed. But just a lot of things to like with him ultimately, and it kind of pushed him up the board because I think almost everyone below him is more of either a lesser version of that type of player or a guy that is more of a one-trick pony, and everyone above him is just a better player, pretty much. Like, that's kind of why he ended up at 5 for me in my 10, because it felt like there was a clear kind of gap between the guys above him and below him because of his skill set. And then I think so my number 10 is the only guy left here for a top 10 or a top 10 spot, and then is Jamari Caldwell of Oregon. Their nose tackle. He's the best way I could describe why I had to put him at 10. I couldn't justify putting him higher because I do think there's some limitations there. And there's some things that I just don't know if are going to end up working out at the next level with him. But he just moves way better than I thought he would move at his size and build. He's like under 6'2", 340 pounds, doesn't have long arms. He's like very sawed-off guy. But, man, he moves so well. It looks really weird on the field. I'm not like it looks like kind of uncanny to me sometimes. Where like you could tell that he wants to rush the passer a little bit more or thinks he can. And sometimes he can't. Like you look at what he did at Houston, like statistically, it was much better than it was Oregon. Granted, Oregon used him as a true like nose because they had Harmon and other guys there. But
Yeah.
like I think he's a little bit of pass rush juice there for 340 pounds as a nose, and he really anchored well against the run. I think for the most part, like him and Harmon were pretty much Oregon's entire run defense. Like if one of those two wasn't on the field, especially, it felt like it was a big run was coming. Like I was watching games, like whenever Harmon wouldn't be on the field or one of them wouldn't be on the field, it was always like I felt like a nightmare was coming against the run the next play. So those two, I think, really kind of held things up for them, and especially Caldwell being that kind of two gapping nose tackle type. So I love athletic nose tackles, man. Like if you can give me a guy that can definitely do the nose tackle stuff, but also has either some pocket pushing ability or has way lighter feet or more explosives than you think. Like he is quick for his size, and didn't want to put him any higher than this because I felt like it was kind of disingenuous to have him over these other guys, but definitely needed to have him here at 10. So where'd you guys have him?
Yeah, he was a 12 for me.
Okay.
So not far off. I think for me, I have him as just a pure 2-down 0 technique.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's just kind of what pushed him down for me a little bit. I mean, I like the lateral quickness. I just don't know if at the NFL level there's really any.
That's the problem. Rush. I'm hoping there's a little bit because of the movement skills, but I do. That's why he's at 10 because I am understanding that there's a good chance there isn't really, at least nothing notable, right?
Like and he's athletic for his size, but I also think if the play is not within arm's reach of him, he's not getting to the ball.
No, not really. No. So yeah. Where'd you have him at, Jake?
I had him at 13.
Same,
so kind of same.
Yeah, it's really not that much. Again, I have him a little bit higher than both of you, pretty much just because I'm hoping there's a little bit of juice in there as a pass rusher. Like nothing ridiculous, like but enough that it's like your nose tackle's not completely useless when it's not first and second down type of thing. So we'll see ultimately what kind of role he plays. I'm also curious how early he goes because like I think playing at Oregon will help him because there'll be more eyes on that group with Harmon being there too. But I'm curious ultimately what teams think about him. But let's move to our number 9 guys. I'll kick it off here because this is a guy that I didn't know what to expect because like this team is just so bad, and I'm kind of feeling the same way when I watch corners later. Joshua Farmer out of FSU is number 9 for me. A really weird evaluation because it's basically like one play it's like he's getting washed in the run game, and another play he's absolutely dominating the same dude who just washed him in the run. Like it's a really weird, it's like a hot and cold thing with him. But I think part of it is like he's the only dude who they had to give a single shit about the entire year on offense, like opposing offenses, because they knew he was the only good player, it felt like, at least on the defensive line. So it's like we're just gonna target this dude. And I feel like he probably just kind of got wore out maybe or something sometimes. Because like the effort level was pretty much always there, but it just felt like sometimes he wouldn't have the power I expected him to have based on other reps that he showed. But he's kind of a shorter but longer player, which I like at defensive tackle. I think he's got, I want to say it's 34 or something inch arms, if I remember correctly, like something ridiculous. And he uses that length pretty well. I think he can shed blocks. He has the power to really move guys out of the way and run in pass game. But just the tape is hot and cold. I think he's going to be a better NFL player than college player. That's tough sometimes to project, but he is a good enough athlete. He's a little bit stiff is kind of the problem, though, too. Like, he's got a weird body type overall. He's like 6'2", 315, I think he weighed in at. But he does a lot of things well, and I think the power is going to play. But I do wonder if there's going to be a little bit of limited pass rush upside with him. But enough where he's not just like a true run defender only, though, either. So.
Yeah. I didn't watch a ton of him, but he was 14 for me from what I saw. I watched enough to like at least get some notes.
Mm-hmm.
I like his violent hands.
Yeah, he's very violent with everything
and
he does.
He said sheds blocks really well. And there is some, because he's a weird like body. I think there's a little alignment versatility there, which is kind of nice.
Mm-hmm.
But I also just really have trouble projecting him
if he's going to be like kind of an undersized D tackle. The issue is he's not quite as athletic or as explosive as I would hope someone with his build would be, and that's kind of what worries me for somebody like him. I have a lot of trouble projecting what he's going to be at the next level.
Yeah, because I could see him playing. I don't think he could play nose, but I think you can line him up almost anywhere else, and I wouldn't be surprised if that's where he plays. And that's the problem, is it's kind of hard to say with him right now. Like, I want to say he's going to end up being just a 3-tech mostly, just because I think that's the cleanest fit with his size profile. But I do think that there's a little bit of athletic limitations there, more so in terms of like flexibility than necessarily explosiveness. But still, like it's a weird kind of build with him. What do you think, Jake?
Yeah, he's number 12 for me. It's kind of a similar spot. You guys mentioned he's got strong hands. They're very quick also, and he has a combo of power and quickness that I do like. I just don't think he's that consistent with that first step, because he can get off occasionally pretty fast, but it's and another guy, I'm gonna say this a lot for the rest of the episode, but the pad level, it doesn't help him stand his ground as much, I think. But yeah, I don't know. In a worse class, he would be higher for me, but those things make me a little
fair enough. On that note, who do you have at number 9, Jake?
My number 9, sorry, is Omar Norman Law. He's a tricky guy for me because their depth at that position.
I'll get into why I have him ranked where I have him in a minute, but that's a big part of why. But go ahead.
Yeah, my main concern with him really is that I haven't really seen him I don't think he's ever really had a starter level role. He's always been a rotational player. But he's fun to watch. He has so much energy.
He
gets off
with
very
playing
quickly.
Like 20 snaps.
And that is a good point because but one of the things that I liked was that I thought he was very efficient with the snaps that he did get. Like he made them count. He had I forget his win rate, but I know he had one of the highest.
He had like I will say, I'm not sure about win rate, but he had an almost 20% pressure percentage on pass rush snaps. Like it was very efficient.
Yeah, so he's making the most of them. I think there's still more to grow there with his pass rush too. I think he could be better with his hands and just have a better plan for his pass rushing game. But yeah, that and the fact that he's never really had a starter role before does concern me a bit. But I think there's so much potential and room for growth there that he's a tricky one. But
where do you have him, Dalton?
I also had him at 9.
Okay, cool.
Because the physical potential is just, there's so much there, especially with how like quick and explosive and powerful he is. And despite like the technique on pass rush and his pad level, especially against the run, he makes up for it. He's still, because he is so powerful, he still holds point of attack well, and he still finds a way to be effective in the pass rush because of how explosive he is. So it's like, if you can get that technique stuff down, I think he could be a really, really effective player at the next level. The one concern that I don't think you can fix with coaching, though, is injuries. He, didn't play a lot in college, partially because he was kind of a rotational player. Also couldn't stay healthy to really, grow into a bigger role. So I think that's going to be an issue for him is, can he stay healthy enough to grow into a better player?
Yeah, I had him number 12, so very close to where you guys at. I think the problem ultimately for me is, I think if you told me who he is right now is what he's going to be, especially that's why I have him at 12, because I feel like I can't really judge a player as a full-time player when I didn't even see them do it at college at any point. Like, I think if you kept him in this role at the NFL, he is worth a late day 2 selection, because even if he's never a full-time player, even if he's only a part of a rotation, like if he goes to a team like the Eagles, for example, like who already is going to do that anyway, perfect because he's not going to have to play 40, 50 snaps a game. He's going to be able to be high energy like he is right now. Like, I mean, let's just be honest. He had less than 100 run defense snaps this year. Like, what am I supposed to do with that? Like, I think he's underdeveloped against the run partially because he doesn't fucking play it. Like, like no offense, it's not his fault, but like he just doesn't play against the run. Like I think his play strength is good, but I think he gets washed a lot because he's just not used to. I think like the technique of how to handle double teams and how to anchor against those. Because how could he? He doesn't play snaps against run defense. Right, it's like, and so again, I'm not going to judge him too much for that as far as like whether he could theoretically do it, but we just don't see a lot of it, right? Like I had to watch like 5 games to get 2 games of tape. Like it's like ridiculous. And again, good for Tennessee. If you're that deep on the defensive line, you can leave this guy off the field sometimes. But like, it's just a hard eval with somebody like this because you at least want to see somebody at the college level handle a full workload, especially if they're not like a true nose tackle type, right? Because then you know that okay, they can play a full range of snaps if they develop into a starter. We don't know necessarily if he can do that. I like to think he probably could, just less efficiently, of course, because you're going to lose efficiency playing twice as many snaps. But he made the most of the snaps he played, and I can't really judge him for anything other than what he showed. I like the build and the skill set. Just again, is he going to be more than a 30, 40% of the time player? If not, probably not going to take him any later or any earlier than I have him ranked. But that's just kind of where I'm at with him too. But very fun player, if nothing else. Let's move on to our number 8 guys because we all have our 9s listed here then. Excuse me, I'll go first here actually since I almost said his name. Shamar Turner out of Texas A&M is my number 8 player. Really interesting one. Where do you guys have him at though first?
He's 8 for me also.
I might have 13.
13. Okay. And I don't blame you because he's a weird player. Former edge rusher out of Texas A&M, played as an edge rusher prior to this year. He looks like it. He plays like he played edge, and in some ways that's good because the athleticism pops off the tape for me for the most part. Quickness and ability to kind of bend inside as an interior player pops off, but he looks again like a guy who played edge rusher till recently and hasn't really developed as an interior player yet. Now, there's a reason they moved him inside. He is listed at least. I don't think he wasn't at any of the All-Star events from what I saw, so don't have official measurements on him, but he was listed 6'4", 300. I don't believe that, frankly. I think he's probably 290 at the most, at least that's what he looks like to me on tape, which is fine. But, again, he's converted edge rusher. I think the problem with him ultimately is that I don't know what kind of player he's going to develop into. Is he going to be a 5-tech that you can't really put inside a ton because he just doesn't have the play strength against the run? Is he a guy that's going to be able to bulk up a little bit more as he keeps transitioning to the interior, keep a lot of the athleticism that made that transition possible, and then be able to play against the run a little bit more as a 3-tech or whatever? I don't really know what direction he's going to go at the NFL level because he does have some growing to do still there. But I like the traits. I like the effort level for the most part from him. I think he made that transition and is trying his best to make a good transition there. But again, that transition is still happening, right? And if he was coming out next year and we got to see another full year of him doing this and he was more productive and just he looked a little bit better at that spot, maybe have him a little bit higher. But because of the traits, I'm still willing to rank him this high, but he's just a weird, again, evaluation because of the situation he's in. So.
Yeah.
You can go, Jake.
Yeah, you go ahead,
Yeah,
Jake. Since you're 8th.
Okay. Yeah, I feel pretty much the same way. I had a lot of the same things. One thing that I wanted to add that I noticed, my biggest concern was that I think he had some of his most quiet games against some of the better teams.
I agree with that. I think there's a reason
Notre Dame and Texas. Yeah, Notre Dame and Texas. I thought he was pretty quiet, and so that was a little bit concerning for me. I thought, he had his better games against some of the worst teams that they played, so a little bit of a concern for me. But overall, I'm still pretty high on him, even though he's 8. I think he has a lot of potential physically, and the effort is there, which is a big thing for me. Because there's a couple of guys in this class that I noted that I don't even know if it's conditioning or effort, but neither of those were worries with me here. And I think he's pretty good with his hands as well.
The edge background, I think, helps a lot.
Comes from being the edge rusher, yeah. So yeah, that's really the biggest thing I noticed with him. I just would have liked to see him play better against some of the better teams they played, but I do think there's a lot of room for growth there.
Yeah. So yeah, I had him at 13 because I just don't see him as more than just a third down pass rusher. I just don't know if he's going to be more than that in the NFL.
I think right now that's what he would be, and that's the issue.
Yeah.
It's like I don't know what that looks like 2 years down the road.
Yep.
So,
and my problem with that is I really only saw him win with speed. That was pretty much it.
mhm.
He was extremely heavily reliant on that, and that's something that you can still do at the next level, but you're not beating guys as cleanly as he was with speed in the NFL. And I don't know what else he has. It just seems like they just stuck the speedy edge rusher in at 3 technique, and yeah, he blew by a bunch of fat, slow college guards, but that's not going to happen against a lot of NFL guards.
Which again, that's fair. I do think there's a power potential there. I did see some of that, but again, it's speed to power though. It's not like he's not going to hold the point of attack right now. He's not going to bull rush a dude into the lap of the quarterback from the 3 tech spot right now. And I think if you have him as a 5 tech, I think that's probably what he should be playing realistically, because it just gets him a little bit closer to that edge type of position where he can get a little bit more speed to power going. But again, like I have him as high just because I think the traits are that good. But he's a project. He just is. Like you don't know really what the NFL is going to use him as at this point. Hell, I mean, there might be teams who are like, hey, you want to go play edge rusher again for us? And like who knows? Like that's possible even for him. I think probably not, but it's just weird. He's a weird player, but he's fun. I think in general still to watch, but I could go a lot of different directions there. So, but who's your number 8, Dalton?
Yeah. So my number 8 is TJ Sanders.
Okay. All right.
So like his quickness, really good first step, and he's a guy that I think can move to a lot of different spots, and he sheds blocks well. However, there's a lot of really good physical tools with him, but there is zero pass rush technique, and that's kind of the concern. I think he could be a lot better. But yeah, there's zero pass rush technique and tends to overcommit on ball fakes. And I don't know if he's big enough to handle double teams, especially in the NFL. And that's going to be kind of the issue. I think he can be a productive player in the NFL just because I think he can move around a lot and have success at a lot of different spots because he does find different ways to win, especially against the run. But yeah, he needs to. There's a lot that he could work on.
Yeah. Where do you have him at?
Yeah. I've got him at number 6.
So I have a number 7, so 6, 7, 8 with us there. So we're all in the same range, but you go ahead. You're a little higher on him than me, so I'll let you go first.
Yeah. I think he's got a lot of potential. I think he's a good athlete. I think Dalton's right that he doesn't have the best pass rush technique, but he's still able to.
It works.
He mess things up. He gets in there and messes things up. He's another guy that I think the pad level could improve. Dalton's right about him not being great against double teams. One thing I noticed was that he stops his feet once he makes contact a lot, which I don't really understand why, but it hurts him. It was at least something I noticed that I think is part of the reason he's not great in those situations. And then something else that I picked up on was he's not very great on stunts.
Yeah.
Especially when he's the one looping around. He doesn't
he's
really
just doing stuff out there, man.
He wants to go forward straight at somebody and blow their doors off. That's all he wants to do.
There's a reason why, and again, another shout out for these guys, but it's fun watch over here. The Stock Exchange guys nicknamed him Bull Rush McIntyre on one of their shows, just because they're like, we need more fun. We need this guy to have a fun nickname to boost him up the boards and all this. But that's what it is. He just wants to run through your face as fast as he can, and whatever way he can do it. And when it works, you're like, hell yeah, dude, that was sick. when it doesn't, it's like, TJ, what are you doing, buddy? The ball's been gone for a little bit now. Like, and I have him at 7 because it's like when it's so awesome, and I appreciate the effort level, I really do, and I appreciate the way he wants to play football. But yeah, you got to add a little bit more finesse, a little more nuance to it. You know what I'm saying? Like,
you can completely take him out of a play if you just run play action.
literally, and that's a problem. But if you give me a guy who has his skill set and has his physical traits, I'm gonna be like, all right, we'll figure something out.
Yeah.
We'll make it work, because you just don't find it very often. Like, he is a smaller player. He's never gonna be a guy that's gonna 2-gap or anything crazy like that with him. But hey, he'll make some plays in the run. I guarantee he's gonna make some highlight plays in the run, because he's gonna guess right, or he's gonna cross the face of the guard and just destroy some poor, unassuming running back, probably one of the smaller ones in the league, and just gets plastered. It'll be a highlight forever. But then he also might completely whiff on the next play. So it's like, I couldn't put him higher than this, but in spirit, I appreciate everything he is about.
Yeah.
Put it that way.
Someone's going to take him in the top 50 because some GM will fall in love with him.
Yeah. And if it's the right one, it'll work out. If it's not,
Jake, this is an Al Davis pick if I ever saw
oh,
one.
hell yeah. Al Davis might rise from the grave to send that card in, bro. No, it's very fun.
Bull Rush?
Yeah.
Isaiah Bunch, TJ Sanders. No. His first 2 picks. No. It's a fun player. I think all of our number 7s have been said. I just want to clarify that with you guys, because Sanders was 7 for me. Who was 7 for you again? You guys?
Walker,
right? And then Jake, who was 7 for you? Okay, yeah.
Alexander.
So we're all those.
And then Sanders was 6, so I'm through.
Cool. Okay.
6.
So yeah, it's just you and I, Dalton, that need to give our 6. So who's your number 6, Dalton?
my 6 was Tyleek Williams.
Me as well. Okay.
What did you have, Jake?
He is my 5.
Okay. So Dalton, you go ahead and start with Tyleek here, because, man,
First note that I wrote down for him, I just wrote powerful in all caps.
Yep.
Yeah. Just
That's a big, powerful boy.
So much power. And, like, Jesus, like, he just, right off the snap, he gets his, he's going to put his hands on somebody, and he's not going anywhere. He is going to take a gap and hold it. And you're not running there. And he's very athletic too. So like once he gets his guy jacked up, he can read, react, because he has high football IQ, and then he can go make a play. The only reason I didn't have him higher is I didn't really see a very explosive first step, and between that and also I think he's kind of a shorter arm guy, and so I just don't really see him being able to offer much as a pass rusher. But I'll tell you what, he is powerful, and when you can just throw an offensive lineman back, you can do a lot like that.
Yeah.
We can find a way for you to contribute on third down when you're that powerful.
Yeah, so my comp for Tyleek is just a big, fat, wrong way sign. Like that's what Tyleek is. Like it's basically like, all right, this is my gap. What's the thing with like my rifle and whatever that is? It's just that, but his gap. Yeah. Like it's like, I love my gap. I thought whatever it is. Like that's what he acts like with his run defense gap.
This is my gap.
Yes,
there are many like it. But
exactly. Exactly. It's literally that. I appreciate it so much, because again, we need players like this in the NFL. Nobody ever fans don't want these players ever, I feel like, but then they get them on their team. They're like, man, our run defense is really good all of a sudden. It's like, yeah, because you drafted a refrigerator that you stuck in the middle of the field and said,
I wonder what that
it's like just,
black hole.
You drafted a freaking ice chest and put it in the middle of the field and said, hey, good, try to run at this thing and run around it. But again, the only problem is I don't think he's ever given a single shit about rushing the passer. No. I don't think he's ever even thought of what the quarterback is. He might not know the quarterback's name on the other team ever.
His pass rush contribution is grabbing a guard in the center and holding them there.
Like
And-
I view him like you view Alfred Collins, Dalton. That's my like I view him more like you view Collins. So like it's kind of like that, except I just like his ability to do that more than I like Collins'
Yeah.
ability to do that.
I
My the same thing.
My difference is I think Collins' first step is quicker. He showed
Right, and that's fine.
pretty
Yeah.
much the only difference.
Gotcha. But like it's just he's fun because you're like as soon as the play starts, you're like, all right, well I know which way the run isn't going to end up going ultimately. Like it might start that way, but it's not going to end up going that way. Probably it's just the outside. But it's like it's fun. But you had him actually a spot higher, Jake. So what do you think with him?
Yeah, I'm not as worried about him as a pass rusher. He's not going to be a great
I think
pass
the thing is,
rusher.
I'm not worried about him as a passer, Jake. I'm aware that he doesn't give a single shit about who the quarterback is, and that's okay with me because he doesn't have to. It's fine. I'm not going to ask him to.
I think he can do something there though. I think he's pretty flexible for his size, and when he's shedding blocks, he'll show glimpses of like I'll be like that would be a beautiful
never heard of it.
like rib move. Quarterback. If he would just do it on a passing down, that'd be helpful. But yeah, he is just a refrigerator in the middle of the field. Yeah. He can't be moved. And yeah, he's another guy. Like you said, Shayne, it's pretty similar to what I said for Collins, where once you add him,
cut from the same cloth for sure. So, but yeah, very very fun player. So I think it's just, by the way, I think Dalton, you're the only one who hasn't said their number 5 yet, because Darius was Alexander was mine, and then Tyleek was Jake's just now. So who's your number 5 guy?
So I think now we're getting into the names that we all have up here. I got Kenneth Grant at 5.
Ooh, okay, all right.
Where do you guys have him?
I have him at 3.
Okay,
he's 3 for me.
So, I mean, I get it. Very athletic for his size. Uses length.
You're telling me.
Yeah.
No, okay. Anyway.
Really solid pass rusher, and I think he can play anywhere from 0 to 3. I think that's kind of where he's going to be. Great, really good motor. That clip of him chasing guys down.
Freak.
Yeah, it's pretty crazy. The thing that kept him from getting a first round grade for me, because he's my first guy that I went from late first to early second. So he's like an early second grade for me. And it was just his pad level. If he can figure out his freaking pad level, he will be a much better player. He has really high potential. It's just that he plays so high for being a pure interior guy, for being in between the guards, and he loses so much leverage and gets pushed around way more than he should in the run for a guy his size. And it's simply because he doesn't get his pads down. If he can figure that out, he will move up. He'll outplay where I have him have him graded, but I just haven't seen it yet.
Yeah, what do you think, Jake?
Yeah. Yeah, pad level was a concern for me, and I think it's a little bigger concern for him than other guys because I don't know how long his arms are, but they looked a little shorter to me on film. And I think, once he gets that high pad level and linemen can kind of like anchor against him, his arms kind of hurt him there. At least that was something that stood out to me. I don't actually
I can tell you here in a second, actually. But I don't remember off the top of my head either. But with him, ultimately for me, unless you had something else you want to throw out there, Jake.
No, Dalton pretty much summed it up well. He's a freak. If he can get those things cleaned up, but even with that, I mean, he's still 3 for me.
So he had just over 33 inch arms, so actually pretty good for interior guys. So yeah.
Okay.
But
that's why.
Well, I think he came in just under 6'4". Is what I think it ended up being. I have to double check that, but basically, with him, it just comes down to the fact that they don't make him like this guy. Like Frank, you could stop the conversation there with him, where it's like human beings aren't made like this, and then they move like that. Typically, that's just not what happens. Like plays of him chasing down running backs from behind, almost, where it's like he shouldn't have been on the screen. Like, what's he doing there? The play's been past the line of scrimmage for a while. Why is Kenneth Grant on the screen right now? But that's obviously not everything at the position, clearly. But the pad level is the thing that's going to hold him back, if anything holds him back. But like nothing limits him physically, nothing limits him from a power perspective, nothing limits him from a physicality perspective. He just needs to get lower. And I think because he isn't this huge guy in terms of height, I have higher hopes that he's going to do that eventually, even if it takes him some time. But like his athleticism alone is going to be a load for a lot of interior offensive linemen at the next level. Like again, there's just not many guys that look like this and play like this. And yeah, he was listed just under 6'4", so he is a smaller in terms of height defensive tackle. That gives me hope that his pad level is something he can fix. But the flexibility might just be the biggest problem there, where he has to just learn how to kind of get a little bit more in the hips there, especially try to get a little bit lower there.
Yeah.
So, but we're on to our number 4 guys, which I know Collins was your number 4, Dalton, so we got you taken care of. Who is your number 4, Jake? Mine as well.
Walter
Okay,
Nolan.
we're starting to fall in line here a little bit. Yeah, I figured.
I think we're all going to be on this.
Yeah, I figured he'd be your 3 then. Dalton. So.
Yeah.
Are you go ahead first then, there, Jake, on Walter? Walter.
A lot of
Anyway.
There's a lot of things I like. Strong. He has a lot of power. He's always in control of his body. There was a couple of guys in this class that I noted for just seeming a little bit out of control, but I never felt that way about him. High motor. I never saw him take plays off. He's athletic. Pretty solid against double teams. He's a sure tackler. I feel like I hardly saw him miss any tackles. He's a little bit of like a tweener for me, a little bit.
The size of the Senior Bowl was interesting. He was a little over 6'3", 293.
Yeah.
I think he's going to end up playing closer to 300, like when he's actually playing.
Yeah.
But interesting build for sure.
Yeah. And I think he, as a pass rusher, could just have a better plan for himself. It kind of feels to me like he didn't really have too much of a plan, but he has all of the tools. And so not really too much of a worry for me there. But yeah, he's 4 for me.
Don, you have him at 3, so I want to give you a chance to talk about him here as well.
So, I'm less worried about like the tweener thing simply because I think he can really, because of the strength and explosiveness.
Right. Yeah.
I think he's anywhere from like, I think you could line him up on like right over the center, like on third downs if you want to, just to create.
For sure on third downs, absolutely.
And you can also line him as far like 0 to 5. I think there's a spot for him, depending on what you want to do. And it's just that explosiveness, that freak strength to be able to just press guys. And then he also, on the pass rush, his plan might not always be the best, but he's got a lot of different moves. He's still figuring out where to
throws a lot of stuff out there. Yeah, he throws a lot of stuff out there.
Got a deep arsenal. And yeah, I mean, the tweener thing is definitely a concern, but I do think like someone that strong, you put a little weight on him, you'll find a use for him. But for him to move inside, because I think he's going to have to, because I don't think he's going to be able to play on the edge. He's got to get his pad level down. That's pretty much the only concern.
Which there's the pad level again.
Yeah. But again, he's the guy that's so strong where it almost doesn't matter, but he's got to get it down a little bit. But he's got a first round grade for me.
Yeah, I'm in the same boat. He's the first of the true, like, this is a true first round grade for me. I have 4 like legitimate, like, in most drafts that are first rounder for me. And like, Alexander's just outside that, same thing with Williams, guys like that. But I think ultimately for him, I think his role at the next level, if I was going to draft him, I'd probably, just based on like some of the best plays I think from him, I'd actually like him as a 5 tech that moves down to the 3 tech on like true pass rush downs, because when you give him a runway a little bit as a 5 tech and can get into the chest of a guard, his power really comes out to play a little bit more in that situation, I think. like he can really convert speed to power, because this is a guy who was one of the top recruits in his class for a reason. Athletically, that checks out. You look at him, like he teleports into gaps, man. Like when he wants to change his lane, basically, he can do it so fast. I think guys aren't prepared for it a lot of the time. That'll be a little bit less of an issue for obviously NFL players against him, but still something that's really good to see. I do think the tweener thing is more of a size concern and less so a like play strength concern. I think he can hold up even at the size he's at. But I think if he is going to play closer to 290 than 300, that's definitely where I'd like him as like a 5 tech that moves down in certain situations.
Especially against the run.
Yes. So, yeah, that's for me. Like, for example, like if he was a Steelers fit, which he's been linked to them a little bit, I think he'd be more of a true like 5 tech in that 3-4 scheme, and then you move him around a little bit depending on the where you're setting up with the defense. So that's what I'd be using him as. But wherever you want to play him inside, especially like on third downs, you can play him anywhere on third down. I don't think it matters where you play him in that situation. So the first and second down might be better as like a base 3-4 end, but we'll see what team drafts him. We'll kind of obviously know more about that at that point. So again, that takes care of our numbers 3 and 4. Then we're all done with those guys. So really the question is for all of us, who's number 1, who's number 2, because I didn't think I'd have a question of that going into this, but I certainly had a debate in my head between 2 guys. So for your number 2 spot, let's go with you, Dalton. Who do you have at number 2?
I did keep Harmon at 2, but
Okay.
it was Harmon's closer to 1 than 3 for me.
Gotcha. How about you, Jake?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Same for me, and I would probably say the
Gotcha.
same thing.
So Harmon is my number 1. So we'll get into that. I did decide to make that switch. And when I say switch, I mean, like, obviously, when I watched, I just ended up with that. But let's start with him for your number 2, because we want to talk about him for you guys, Dalton. Why did you ultimately have him at number 2?
So, I mean, he is all the way up at 2 because really strong at the point of attack, just strong in general. Holds his own against double teams, which is really nice. And he's strong enough to split them too. Like, that's the crazy thing. Not only does he like occupy double teams and hold his ground, but he actually can still beat double teams.
He will beat them.
One of
times.
2 guys in this class that I think can legitimately do that. And he consistently put in pass rush while he's not going to be a huge he's never going to be, a extremely productive guy in the pass rush. He does consistently push the pocket, and he's very quick, which is nice. He just does a lot of good things. The only thing I put as a concern is that on the pass rush, there's not a lot of moves. It's really just power. But if it ain't broke, don't fix it. That's kind of the thing. But yeah, there's a lot to like about Harmon.
Yeah, I'll let you go next year, Jake, because I have one, so I'll let you start off here with that.
I had pretty much the only negative thing I jotted down was that he didn't really seem to have like a second move to go to if the first pass rushing move doesn't work. But I mean, even when that happens, he's like, okay, I'm just gonna push my way through. So it's not a huge concern for me, and I think that's something that can be worked on in the NFL. Not really anything else that I didn't like about him. I thought maybe he could finish plays a little bit better, but I think that's just something that will come. He did well against the run. As Dalton said, he can push through double teams, split through double teams. He moves very, very well for his size. He was productive in college, so no worries for me there. And yeah, it's tough. I'm just a little bit higher on Graham, but both of them, I could definitely see the argument for being number 1.
Yeah, I think for me, why I have number 1, I'll just read I tend to do this for the top guys because I think it makes a little bit more sense. But I have my blurb from when I was watching. Strong, well-built 3 tech with experience as a nose, dropped weight when he moved from Michigan State to Oregon to become a more well-rounded lineman. Ended up leading the country in pressures from the interior first year after doing that. So obviously the pass rush came along with that. Still has his ability to run defense, but now flashes plenty of pass rush juice because of the power and the quickness that he has. Needs to work on his awareness, finishing plays, and improving his first step especially. I think he's still developing as a pass rusher. And this is the key thing for me is the run defense was still something that stuck with him even after he dropped weight, moving from Michigan State to Oregon to become more of that, like I said, true like do it all three tech. But the run defense is still firmly there with him, even at a slightly smaller size. And I think he has room to grow as a pass rusher because he already wins with power, and power plays at the next level. Like I'm not worried about him being anything close to a minus as a pass rusher when he makes the jump. So even if he never fully develops as a pass rusher, the just ability to never come off the field because of how well-rounded his skill set is, it's kind of makes it really hard for me not to have him one. Even though Mason Graham, very comparably good player, I'll get into kind of what separated those two for me. But let's talk about Mason Graham here. Then your guys is number one, and my number two. So Jake, why don't you kick us off with talking about Mason here?
I don't even really know where to start about the things that I like about his game. He's just a monster on the inside. Very, very powerful. He has a strong punch with his hands. I never really saw him put his hands in a bad spot. He's very smart about where he places them. He's got good leverage. He can extend his arms on linemen. I think he's very quick for the position. Doesn't miss a lot of tackles. Got to the quarterback consistently. I do think if I had one complaint, I would say that I think he could be a better finisher. I think right now he's a little bit more of a disruptor where he'll get in there and create havoc. I think he could be a little better at finishing. But that's a little bit of a nitpick, I feel like. I also thought his pad level could be a little bit better, but I don't think it's that big of an issue, and it's really one of my only concerns with him. But yeah, I just think he's slightly more well-rounded, which is why I had him one, I guess.
Yeah. And I think like a lot of it is the versatility with him. I think you can move because he's such a good athlete. You can kind of move him around a lot. And like you said, the hand fighting is so good. And that strong punch. And that just allows him to really control gaps well because once he gets his hands on people, he does whatever he wants. My only real concerns then, and what kind of kept me from having like the super high grades that I saw people have on him, is not super explosive off the snap. You know, I mean, at times it's not always there, which I think is going to keep him from being like a super productive guy. I just don't know if I see like a high sack total potential for him. And also, while he's great at keeping guys' hands off of him, when guys did get their hands on him, he sometimes had a little trouble getting away. But again, we're kind of nitpicking here. He's still one of my higher graded D linemen in the last couple of years. Very similar grade to where I had what's his name from Texas last year. Byron Young, yeah.
Byron Young.
Murphy.
Byron Murphy, yeah.
All the
Murphy,
Byrons in the
yeah.
league. Byron Young, Byron Murphy,
yeah,
Byron. Who knows?
Yeah,
how many
similar grade there. But like for me, you know, to give a top 10 grade to somebody, they gotta be Derek Brown throwing NFL guard prospects at opposing quarterbacks. And I don't know if Graham's quite there, but he's a very good prospect. And in this class, he'll probably go in the top 10.
Yeah, I think for me, ultimately, the reason I have him at 2 is really not a slight to Graham at all. I just think Harmon has higher ceiling, honestly. That's just kind of what it comes down to. I think Graham's a better player right now, pretty comfortably, especially from like an all-around standpoint. But you talked about a little bit, Dalton. There's a lot of times where I just thought sometimes he got blocked and stayed blocked. And I think the length is an issue for him a little bit, where I didn't see that as much with Harmon. So I feel like maybe that's just something that's part of his game. That just sometimes he's going to get blocked and just he's not going to be able to win some matchups. But realistically, this is about as high as floor as you can have as a defensive tackle. He's going to play for 10 years. He's probably going to make some Pro Bowls at the worst case scenario. If you desperately need a guy who you can rely on in the interior and you don't know if you have anyone else, he probably would be my first pick because I'm very confident about what I'm going to get from him. With Harmon, I think the pass rush potential, because he's already a great power rusher, I don't see the same issues as far as him having trouble like shedding blocks or getting off blocks as much with him. I think he is more like just has more potential in that regard. Plus, the run defense is still very good. But Graham does have the best combination of everything day one, I think, if you were to draft him. So, yeah, I'm going to probably have both of them hovering around top 15, top 20 in this class. So, honestly, kind of pick your poison there. But I did decide to make that switch partly because I feel like in a class where, especially Graham has been hyped as like one of the 5 best players in the class, I kind of wanted to put a point out there that like he's very good, but I think there's guys who are right on his level, and that's why I kind of think I stuck with Harmon.
Yeah, I didn't see the top 5 potential that
even in a little bit of a
I
weaker
didn't
class,
see it.
it's just there's too many guys who I think are difference makers that we've already talked about or that we're going to talk about very soon, probably with the edge rankings coming up. Where it's just a little bit rich for me. Like there's teams where I'm like, all right, if you just want to make sure you hit a double or hit it down the fairway, instead of 350, hit it 300 down. Like, sure, take the player that's probably going to be very good, but I'm not doing it simply because he's just the best player on the board if I'm in that situation.
Yeah. Like he'll probably end up being like the 5th or 6th best defensive player on my board. But like we're gonna get into a few other guys over the next few weeks that I think just like you said, they're more difference makers. And I think that's my biggest fear with him is that he's gonna be a good player, but not a difference maker.
Right.
Now if he takes another step,
then we're
he's
talking
gonna be
about
a problem.
Yeah.
But that hasn't shown up on tape, and I don't know if he's not a physical freak either, which is kind of the issue, which is kind of what limits that ceiling a little bit.
Like if we're talking pure potential, he might be 4th for me if we're just going like ceiling. Yeah. But again, like that you can't just do that. Like I know a lot of people like to hedge their bets on potential, but there's a thing of like this guy's already really good. Sometimes you just need a guy who's really good, and you're happy to get a guy who's really good. You don't have to go shoot for the stars constantly. Jaguars. Anyway, I'm not trying to shout any particular team out right now, but that's what the Jaguars do. Maybe not anymore. We'll see. I think they hired one of the Rams guys to be the GM recently. I want to say.
I think so. Yeah.
That's good. That's probably
it's not bulky. Let's put it that way.
It's not Trent out here. Get out of here, Trent. Anyway, no, that'll do it for us for the interior defensive line group. Next week, I believe, is going to be the next edition of our divisional mock draft series that we're doing. Should be. I have to double check that, but getting into some of that type of stuff. And then our next position group will be the edge, which should be plenty of fun as well.
Yeah.
This whole defensive line.
Are we just doing edge, or is that edge and off ball?
I do believe it is the off-ball linebackers too, because frankly, there's not a lot of dudes at linebacker that I think are guys we have to talk about.
I think there's only one that we want to talk about. Like let's be honest. There's one that's actually fun to talk about. Unless there's another one that if you have him as an off-ball linebacker, I don't think he's an edge, but that's pretty much it.
Yeah, so the next 2 shows we have are our 3-round divisional mocks, NFC West and AFC West. Then we're getting top 10 edges, top 5 off-ball. So that's going to be the order there. So we'll have some time to watch all the edges. All the linebackers should have plenty of time to watch everyone we want to watch there. But should be a fun group regardless. And yeah, you're right with the linebackers. It's going to be interesting to what is a linebacker really, guys?
Yeah.
What, now that it's 2020, what is it now? Anyway. So that'll do it for us this week, guys. We'll see you guys next time.